welcome to another episode of Salt Ed. My name is Tom Hatch, and I'm the creator of Salt. With me today we have Shane Lee, one of our core engineers on the Salt project. Now, we wanted to talk a little bit today about deprecating Python 2 in Salt. We recently published and announced that we were going to deprecate Python 2, but there are some concerns that people have, and Shane is here to help us talk through some of those. What are some of the concerns that people have, Shane?
Well, one of the things I've heard from the community is, why do we need to deprecate Python 2?
Well, that's an excellent question. See, the problem that we're running into is that the Python Foundation is deprecating all support for Python 2 at the end of the year. And some people have come back and expressed that, well, but aren't the platforms and operating systems promising to also support Python 2 inside of their own life cycles? And while this is true, the big problem that we run into is that if we look at older versions of Python that are deprecated, they no longer receive security audits. They no longer receive CVEs and vulnerabilities. And so the research and the attention to maintaining that platform dwindles. And subsequently, as that dwindles, the motivation dwindles, or the capability even dwindles for operating system vendors to give us the support that they have. And so it's one of these situations where we need to be mindful that only really severe breaks that are found are going to be fixed. Now, the other thing is that with the deprecation of Python 2 at the end of 2019, the documentation for Python 2 is going to go away. Many of the support infrastructure components are going to go away. And we're also seeing that the dependencies that Salt has are already dropping support for Python 2, which makes it very difficult as an entire ecosystem is decaying out from under us. And so it becomes an untenable situation to maintain Salt on Python 2. Now, which in some ways is less than fantastic. Python 2 has served us well for a very, very long time.
So what version of Python 3 will we support then?
So when we started supporting Python 3, we benchmarked at Python 3.4. Now Python 3.4 is getting deprecated, well, or was deprecated in March. And so we've got another platform that isn't being maintained long term. But to make the transition very smooth, the code inside of Salt is going to still support Python 3 for the Sodium release. And so to remind everyone where we are, we just released Fluorine, which is followed by Neon, and then Sodium. We plan on releasing Sodium early in 2020. And with the release of Sodium, again, there will no longer be support for Python 2. And this is in accordance with the fact that Python 2 is going to be deprecated at that time. The Fluorine and Neon releases will still be supported by SaltStack moving forward for their normal lifespan into the next the normal 3-release lifespan that we give them. And so companies that aren't able to migrate away from Python 2 completely will still be able to use older versions of Salt on Python 2 beyond the Sodium release.
Okay. So what about platforms that don't ship with a version of Python 3 that we support?
So this is something that we've been very careful to look at. As we go back and we look at the platforms that are out there that are being widely used, we're primarily looking at enterprise Linux distributions. Things like Red Hat 6 and 7, things like SUSE Enterprise 12. And we've gone back, and that's another one of the reasons why we're still benchmarking at 3.4. 3.4 is available on every long-term supported Linux distribution that's out there. And we've very carefully taken a look at when these distributions are going to be deprecated, and also which distributions are backporting Python 3.6. As we move forward and look at overall code use on Python 3, most projects seem to be benchmarking on Python 3.6. And it's understandable why. In Python 3.5, the whole async await framework was introduced. And in Python 3.6, significant performance improvements were added. as well as async generators, which at that point were the last major feature releases that we've seen in addition to the async IO framework inside of Python. And so subsequently, 3.6 becomes a really good version to benchmark off of. Another reason is just that 3.6 is what was available when these distributions that are on Python 3 were shipped. And so there are very few distributions left that only support Python 3.4. And so the plan is that now that we have published a SALT enhancement proposal and it has been ratified internally and externally for the deprecation of Python 2, we're planning on releasing an additional SALT enhancement proposal that outlines how we're going to systematically deprecate versions of Python in the future. Because SALT itself will most likely in a future release, probably beyond the magnesium release of SALT, also benchmark on 3.6. Again, because this is available on the vast majority of systems that are out there. And then for systems that we need to backport to, SALT will provide a build of Python that SaltStack will maintain for these distributions, much in the same way that we provide Python for Windows and AIX and Solaris today.
Okay. So does that mean we can finally start using async IO?
Yes. One of the things that's really exciting about Python 3 is the introduction of async IO. Async IO is an incredible framework that takes many of the things that made SALT's speed and power possible through using ZeroMQ, but extends those capabilities up into the language. We're really excited to be able to start using async IO. Now, we're going to be able to start using async await in earnest in the future of SALT once we're able to see exactly what that deprecation path looks like. And so again, let me make it very clear. For the sodium release of SALT that we're planning on releasing early in 2020, that will be on Python 3.4. Future releases of SALT will be based on 3.5 or 3.6, most likely 3.6. But we still need to make sure that we have an open conversation with the community about how we are going to support different versions of Python. And when we are able to baseline on Python 3.5 or 3.6, we can start using the async await keywords and syntax inside of SALT. Because async await, again, was introduced in Python 3.5, and asynchronous generators were introduced in Python 3.6. At that point, giving us a very full and very rich syntactic access into the async IO framework.
Well, thank you, Tom.
Well, thank you for coming on, Shane, and thank you for helping us try and make it as clear as possible what we need to do to be able to continue to push SALT into the future. And thanks for watching, and I hope that this answers some of your questions about the Python 2 to Python 3 migration. If there's still questions in the community about this migration, or even just general topic about the Python switch from 2 to 3, please leave comments, and we'll be happy to come back and film another episode that answers some of those questions as well. Thank you.